bad guy character in professional wrestling.
When's the last time you got laid?
French toast is the exchange student that you have like a 3-week affair with.
Like, we can see that you don't have pants on.
Can we tell the truth about Dusty sooner or later?
Bro, less people wanted that than are currently watching our stream.
And you know Vince, and you still think, are these true? It's like...
Welcome to the Mark It Down podcast.
Aussie, and welcome to another edition of the Mark It Down podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, joined tonight by nobody because it is currently 1:15 on the East Coast of America. But I stayed up late because we were a little bit snowed in to watch AEW Grand Slam, mostly so you guys didn't have to. This was a very built-up show. It was a pretty enjoyable show. GGN already here. The AEW Grand Slam wasn't nothing to change or expect tonight, but NXT was still great and a good show tonight. So I think I did not watch NXT. I did my best to watch the highlights. I'm not going to lie. Forgot it was on tonight until I hopped on Squared Circle earlier. But I saw a couple of the highlights. It looked really good. Shout out Stephanie Vacar winning the title. Very, very happy she won. Jordan Grace debuted. I'm sure James will be very happy about that. So if you guys watched all of the wrestling tonight, both I do believe it was Vengeance Day and Grand Slam, you had a really great night of wrestling. I was a little distracted by the Four Nations tournament for the hockey. Shout out USA beating Canada. I was also distracted by All-Star Saturday night for the NBA. Hence why I'm wearing a Sixers jersey. This is the AI one that he wore in 2002 with the number 6 for Dr. J. So I am not a Sixers fan, trust me. But no, great night of wrestling for everybody. I do actually might want to actually go back and watch that NXT show. It looked really good. But let us get into the show that I'm trying to cover, which was Grand Slam. And we started off the show with Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega taking on Don Callis family members, Konosuke Takeshita, and Kyle Fletcher. First notes I saw outside of the fact that we had Toni Schiavone and Nigel on commentary this evening was that Kenny came out using his Final Fantasy theme. He actually reused the gear that he used at his re-debut in New Japan back in January. Still looks great, and it's his first big match back in AEW, so I'm pretty cool with that. And I have to imagine that most people, at least here in the States, did not see Kenny wear that gear. So unless you're a super dork like me and James are, you probably missed it. We had that carny piece of shit, Don Callis, on commentary. Mark Davis, surprisingly with him, somehow he did not factor into this match. Don factored in a little bit. He attempted to interfere, or he actually did interfere with Will at a certain point in the match, but he did not factor into the finish, which I thought was interesting. Another thing I thought was interesting was Kyle Fletcher getting booed in his own home country. You got to be doing something right if you're getting booed in your home country. Ospreay was way over, and he mentioned that later, and we'll talk about that. Obviously, Kenny was as well, but Ospreay was the guy here tonight. Some cool spots throughout the match. Actually, you know what? We'll hop to the end and we'll get into some cool spots after. Screw it. I'm going the way I wrote them down. Anyway, some cool spots throughout the night. We had both Ospreay and Kenny do the Terminator dives simultaneously. Will actually was the one to go down to his knees and set it up. And Kenny was like, really? And they ended up doing it, which ended up being really cool. Kenny, unfortunately, I don't know if this was a botch or it was an attempted reversal that just didn't look good. Whatever it was, Kenny attempted a poison rana on Takeshita. It just didn't come out good. Whatever happened there, it just looked bad. And I don't want to take away from a very, very good match, but it was just something that stood out to me while I was watching. So hopefully nobody docks them too many points off of that because this was still a really good match. A bit later in the match, we had Kenny carrying Takeshita to the middle rope for a one-winged angel, but Takeshita was actually attempting to fight out of it. So Ospreay hopped up onto the top rope and hit him with a cutter off of Kenny's shoulders, which was pretty cool. Kenny then went for a V-trigger onto Takeshita, but Fletcher hit him with a thrust kick. So Will then came back in, hit him with a hidden blade, and then was like, Kenny, wake up, you got to hit the V-trigger. Kenny then hit the V-trigger, and both men went for their finisher. Kenny with the one-winged angel on Takeshita, and Will went for a Stormbreaker onto Fletcher, but both Takeshita and Fletcher countered into tombstone pile drivers, and Kenny and Will were forced to kick out. A little bit later, after Kenny got hit with one of those vicious Takeshita knee strikes, and let me tell you, he's got one of the best knee strikes in the business right now. He really does. And then after that, Fletcher helped out with an assisted sheer drop brainbuster. Ospreay broke up the pinfall and then jumped on top of Kenny to protect him, similar to what he did a couple of weeks ago on Dynamite. That ended up in the 2-on-1, and Fletcher and Ospreay ended up taking each other out and going out of the ring. But that did allow Kenny time to recover, and we ended up with him against Takeshita one-on-one in the ring. Kenny got the upper hand there for a little bit, but Fletcher ended up recovering before Will did, and he stopped Kenny right in his tracks, right as he was about to hit Takeshita with another V-trigger, and then brought Kenny up to the top rope. Kenny then was able to recover, threw Fletcher off of the top rope to the outside, and then Takeshita came up, but Kenny was able to counter him by dropping through his legs and then bringing Takeshita down, and Takeshita's head ended up hitting the metal part of the turnbuckle between where the padded part is and where the ring post is. While that was happening, Ospreay, I don't know where he came from, but he somehow went around the ring, came in, and just freaking toe-paid straight over the turnbuckles and the post and over the whole thing and just took Fletcher out onto the outside. And as that was happening, Omega got Takeshita up for a one-winged angel, but he waited for Ospreay to get back up off the floor, climb to the top rope, and then Ospreay hit a hidden blade, which Kenny then immediately put into a one-winged angel, and they were able to pick up the win against the Don Callis family, much to the shock of that Carney piece of shit. Let me say, this was a really good match. I feel like there could be a little bit more out of these guys, but this is going to be a running theme with the show, and I want you guys to know it now. This was a pre-taped show. Obviously, it was in Australia. And because of that, I feel like we missed a lot of stuff. Maybe I was going in with too high expectations with this because it was built so well. And, there were initially rumors this was going to be a pay-per-view. That obviously didn't happen that way. And it ended up kind of being a special edition of Collision. Granted, Grand Slams here in New York the last few years have just been special editions of Dynamite, but they were still live. This was not. And I do think it negatively impacted every match on this card. Let me tell you, and I'll get into more of that later. But for this match, and for most of them, you can see how good the wrestling was in this. And this is one of those matches, I say this all the time on the show. You had these four guys in the ring. There's too much talent in this match for it not to be good. I think my biggest takeaway from this is Kenny and Will being together is awesome. Their super finisher is unbelievable. A top rope hidden blade into a one-winged angel has to be physically impossible to kick out of. I mean, the one-winged angel is impossible to kick out of unless your name is Kota Ibushi. And you're going to do a hidden blade into that? That should never be kicked out of under any circumstances ever. Unless maybe your name is Kota Ibushi. But even then, we'll see. So I thought these four men put on a hell of a match. Got the crowd really rolling early. But again, I do think the pre-taped aspect of it kind of probably dialed down the crowd a little bit. So we'll see what's said. Maria agreeing with me, best way to open a wrestling show. you can't do too much better than these four guys in the ring to open a show. And I have to imagine the live crowd there was absolutely unbelievable. I hope they had a really good time. I haven't really had a chance to read what happened. There was a lot of spoilers over on Reddit and other parts of the internet, and I've been actively avoiding them. So I haven't really gotten a post-show digest of it from what the crowd was looking at. Because again, I do think the pre-taped kind of killed the crowd, at least on the screen. So hopefully they had a great time because they sounded like they had a really good time. They were cursing enough I think they did. But those are the Aussies for you. Speaking of Aussies, let's move on to our next match where we saw Mercedes Moné face off against hometown hero, or home country hero, I guess I'll say, Harley Cameron for the TBS Championship. First thing I will note was that we had Mono Watanabe at ringside. I believe she is from Stardom / New Japan. She had just won a tournament where she will be able to challenge any of the New Japan Strong or Stardom Women's Champions in the near future. So she was there to check things out with Mercedes, obviously being the New Japan Strong Women's Championship. Mercedes came out with some great Crocodile Dundee gear. That's really hard to say. But to start the match, there were big Field of Wrath chants for Harley. Obviously, this crowd really much behind her. And she did what she had to do early. She broke out Mini Moné, the puppet, from underneath the ring and held it while delivering some punches up on the turnbuckle to Mercedes. But Mercedes then ruined it, absolutely just sending Harley back, taking the puppet, stomping it out, and then throwing it out of the ring. Mercedes calling this, or excuse me, Maria, sorry, calling this a very entertaining match. And it was. It really, really was. Later in the match, after Mercedes knocked Harley out of the ring, Harley was able to grab Mini Moné from where Mercedes threw it and actually use it to draw Mercedes to the outside and then hit her with the puppet on her hand before bouncing Mercedes off the apron and throwing her back into the ring. Harley then climbed to the top rope, puppet still on hand, and hit Mercedes with a crossbody and then what Nigel called an Australian destroyer, but Mercedes unfortunately was able to kick out. It was at this point where the puppet had gone flying and Aubrey Edwards, God bless her, saved the puppet and was able to safely remove it from the ring. After this, the two women exchanged a couple of pinfall attempts. Mercedes got in some good offense. Harley was able to kick out, and then Harley went on a string of pinning predicaments, as we would like to call them. But Mercedes was able to kick out of all of them up until Harley ended up hitting what I basically amounted to a 619. Mercedes was, I think, a little too close to the corner for Harley to really hit it. So she ended up kind of hitting Mercedes with her knees. And hot take, I think I would kind of like that as a move instead of your traditional 619 with the feet. I think if you actually use your knees, it could actually be really cool. So I don't know if it was intentional or just Harley not wanting to break her shins on those posts. But either way, it looked pretty decent. Harley then went on top and went for a splash, but Mercedes rolled out of the way and hit the Moné Maker and then retained her title. After the match, Mercedes went over to Mono Watanabe and got in her face, even shoving the New Japan title in her face and pushing her with it a little bit. So again, this was another good match. All these matches were good tonight. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself a lot with that. I really think the fact that this was pre-recorded cut a lot out of what I was seeing. It cut a lot of the emotion out of it, and it kind of upset me. I think the biggest mistake AEW made in this, and I know they probably had to do it for Toni later, and we'll get to that, but even then, they don't even really get it. I have to imagine Harley got a really big standing ovation from this after the match. This is a woman who has only been wrestling a year, maybe two, and she went out, put on a great match with one of, as she calls, the greatest of all time in the ring, in the women's division. And Mercedes definitely is. And I know Mercedes can, probably wrestle a broomstick to a pretty decent match, but Harley more than held her own in this match. She had no flubs. She was great. And unfortunately, I think just because of the pre-taped aspect of this match, again, we didn't get to see the love and adoration she probably received from this Australian crowd. And I do think that really took away from a lot of this. And is really, really unfortunate because I think this was a match the crowd was really going to help make. A hometown underdog and one of probably the biggest long shots in a long time. And the crowd was audibly behind her from what we heard and what we saw. But I think the star-making moment for Harley, outside of the fact she's probably had quite a few on Dynamite recently, was her in the ring defeated to a standing Australian ovation. I don't know if they chanted. I don't know what. Maybe it's online. I haven't seen it yet. Obviously, like I said, I was trying to avoid spoilers all day. And maybe I've just been spoiled by live wrestling lately. Raw is live. SmackDown is live. Dynamite is live. The AEW and WWE pay-per-views are live. This is one of, if not the biggest drawback to the fact that this was pre-taped. And they obviously clearly had to keep it within 2 hours because it was very obvious to me that the show that they put on in Australia was not 2 hours. And I think that is really disappointing. I hope there's a live version of it somewhere at some point. I don't care if they put it on Triller, they could put it on Max in full or HBO Max. I hate calling it Max. Whatever it is. I will watch this back if I have the full version of it because I have to imagine it was absolutely unbelievable. Maria saying the show had a pay-per-view feel to it. And I agree, it did, at least going into it. Like, it definitely did. And I think the crowd backed that up. The build backed that up. The matches, the in-ring work backed that up. The editing did not. And I was really, really excited for the show because I thought it would have a pay-per-view feel to it. I thought it would at least have a AEW Grand Slam in New York feel to it. And I've been both there live and at home for some of them. And even at home, there is a palpable buzz when you're watching at home for those shows because it is live. And because this one wasn't, I do think it took a lot away from it. So, which is why I'm really advocating and hoping for a live cut of this episode, because I do believe it would have a real pay-per-view feel to it. And I think it would completely change the dynamic of the show. Seeing Harley, I'm hoping, being serenaded by the Australian crowd after her match, I think would make a huge difference, not only for this show as a whole in terms of the vibes of it, but for her character. And you could tell something definitely happened. I was flipping through Twitter before I hopped on the match, hopped on the show here really quick. And they did a post-match interview with Harley, and she was crying. She was like actually breaking down in her interview. Like it was almost out of character. She mentioned a couple of times because she had to, like, I wish I won, but like she could not be more grateful for the opportunity and the fact that she was able to perform in front of her home country in such a good match for a title against one of the best women wrestlers ever. And I'm so happy she was able to do it. Like I said, she's only been wrestling for 2 years. And the fact that she was able to have this meteoric rise within the last couple of months is unbelievable. I know she fell short of the Wrestling Observer Most Improved Award. But if you really think about it, it's only been a couple of months. She was a really late candidate for that. So there's a chance she might win it next year just because she continues to improve exponentially. And I hope she continues to do so. I hope she continues to get pushed. And I want more Harley Cameron on my television as much as possible. So I do think this will hopefully, or at least it hopefully does, propel her into stardom. And again, hopefully we can get that footage of her post-match because I do think it'll help her character out a lot. After that, we went to commercials. Again, the biggest killer of the show. But we came back to a backstage promo real quick from Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. Kenny, obviously, they're both still fired up after the match. But they're not satisfied. So Kenny calls out Takeshita for an international title match at Revolution. And then Ospreay hops in to talk some shit about Fletcher's home country cheering for Ospreay instead of Fletcher before challenging Fletcher, to a steel cage match at Revolution. So it looks like we have those two matches set up for March 9th. Both of them really intriguing. Very interested to see if Kenny comes back and wins a title, especially Takeshita's title, this quickly. I don't think I'll mind it. The Ospreay Fletcher thing, I'm okay either way, but that's something for the future. In the short term, just for the title thing, I'm okay either way too with that, especially because Takeshita's been doing a great job of defending the title overseas. It was something Kenny mentioned in his promo, and Kenny has some sort of contract with New Japan. I don't know. I think maybe it's a per appearance basis, whatever it is. So if Kenny did win that title, he would be defending it in New Japan. And I think that would be pretty cool. Takeshita has contracts with AEW, New Japan, and I believe DDT, if I'm not mistaken, or wherever he came out from. So he's got 3 contracts, and he could defend it in a few more places. But either way, I do like whoever comes out of that on top will most likely be defending the title overseas. That is what we wanted from this title when they came up with it. So it's really cool that either way, I have to imagine that either man will be defending it, well, most likely in Japan, but hopefully they can get it in a couple other places. Maria saying that Kenny is totally taking the championship off of Takeshita. And I do think there is a very good chance of that. Kenny needs a couple of win backs off of Takeshita. He was talking about the fact that Takeshita has beaten him twice, or at least pinned him twice, and Kenny coming back, winning the international championship, which I do think has a good amount of prestige to it. Some really, really big names in AEW have won that title. Moxley, Cassidy, Pac, so on and so forth. And now Takeshita, who is a rising star in the company. I hate Takeshita losing it just because I'm a really big fan of his. Obviously, #1 Takeshita supporter here on the pod, been day one. But Kenny winning it at Revolution does make sense. I think Kenny coming back and losing so early would be kind of dumb. So it does make a lot of sense. But obviously, we got a few weeks to talk about that. So we will discuss it more in the future, especially when James comes back, because I got to imagine he's going to want to talk about that a lot. After this backstage promo, we went into our Brisbane Brawl, which saw Death Rider members Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli face off against Switchblade Jay White and the Rated R superstar Adam Copeland. Again, I refuse to call him just Cope, but whatever. I will say the entrance for Copeland was awesome. When they stopped his music, the entire Australian crowd continued to sing the lyrics up and through about the hook, and they played it on TV. That was something I figured could have been cut for time with this edited version of the show, but they left it in, and that was the feeling I wanted from this crowd throughout the entire episode, and I finally got it there. I got it with some chants throughout some matches too, but this is what you expect from these international crowds. You see it when, WWE goes to, whether it was Scotland or they go to France or Germany, whatever it is, they sing and they do these chants, and the Aussies are no different, trust me. And we got some, but I think a lot of it got killed in editing, and that was unfortunate. So I was glad they kept this in, and it made for a really cool moment. Claudio also came out for his entrance. I don't know if it was a Sub-Zero or a Bane mask. Either way, he looked like a fucking badass. Switchblade has on some really nice white gear that I liked. So lot of good stuff on the entrances today. And Marina obviously was with the Death Riders as they came out. Now Maria is saying this is an old school ECW style match. I unfortunately haven't watched enough ECW, but I'm gonna believe you on this one. It was definitely violent. Again, I think this was just another casualty of the editing, but I didn't necessarily love this. But let's get into it, because there was a lot of fun stuff, because we had Copeland and Claudio fighting into the stands early, and then you ended up having Copeland climbing up on a ledge and diving off of it onto Claudio. Sting obviously setting a very bad example for this older generation. We had some cool table spots. Fun fact, Aussie tables are about the same width as American tables, little shorter, brighter wood, but they break pretty much the same. They're not like those New Japan tables. Those things are long and skinny, and they look like Pong tables back in college. And I mean, real Pong tables, not like the Everlast ones you guys broke out and we all had to play on. I meant like the professional Pong tables. Those hurt probably a little bit more. Either way, quite a few of those. Trash can lids look the same though. As far as chants go, we had some nice "You're a wanker" chant, or Moxley's a wanker chants towards him. Nigel, God bless him, called out Australia for not doing anything good except Crocodile Dundee, Bluey, and koalas with chlamydia. Shout out to John Oliver, Koala Chlamydia Award at the Australian Zoo. We had a fun spot early before the commercial where Marina Shafir got involved with a kendo stick. And she was hitting Copeland. I put Mox for some reason. Mox was fighting with Copeland. And she was hitting Copeland until Switchblade came in and broke it up, stole the kendo stick, and he probably actually would have hit her until Claudio got involved. He took out Switch and then took Copeland off of the top turnbuckle and put him through the table they had set up on the outside as we headed into commercial. As we came back from commercial, Marina was actually jaw-jacking with the cameraman, and that allowed Switchblade to come over and steal the kendo stick from her again, and then came into the ring and beat the hell out of Mox and Claudio until Moxley finally caught it and threw him into a chair that was set up between the turnbuckles. Switchblade was able to recover, though, and then he threw Claudio through a chair, and then threw Moxley out of the ring, hit Claudio with a Blade Runner, and then he went for the pinfall, but that little piece of shit, Wheeler Yuta, came in with a belt to break up the pin. Wheeler then tried to beat up Switch with the belt, but the King Switch was not having it and just got up, walked over to Yuta, and just hit him with a Blade Runner, and that basically took him out. However, then Moxley intervened, or he attempted to, but Copeland was able to grab him by both feet and pull him huevos first into the post. Copeland then went into the ring and faced off with Claudio and speared him into a table that was set up in the corner of the ring before turning around and spearing Moxley, who had just gotten back to his feet. Copeland then went out of the ring and went under it and grabbed a barbed wire wrapped chair. I had to make sure I said that right. And then he came back into the ring and beat Moxley with it for a bit before grabbing another chair and laying it under Moxley's head, setting it for a concerto with the barbed wire chair. However, Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir jumped in to save Moxley, and that ended up working out well as Claudio was able to recover. He came back in, hit a neutralizer onto Copeland, but Cope was able to kick out. And then Moxley immediately jumped on him and locked in a bulldog choke. And White was taken out on the outside by Wheeler Yuta. Copeland was just stuck in the middle of the ring, nowhere to go. And he eventually passed out, and the referee had a call for the bell, and that gave the Death Riders the win which was met by a lot of chants of bullshit from the crowd. After the bell, Moxley reapplied the Bulldog choke for a while, just however long he wanted, completely putting Copeland out. And then a bloodied, because of this barbed wire steel chair, and very irate Moxley led the Death Riders out of the ring as Copeland and White were left lying. So, Maria, as you said, this was a little old school ECW style, but I think two things. One, I don't necessarily love the ending. I don't mind Moxley passing out Copeland, but I think maybe it was more of just a surprise to me because I personally figured Moxley was going to retain the title at Revolution. But law of opposite momentum is now coming into play. Shout out James. If Moxley was going to retain at Revolution, in my head, it would have made sense for White and Copeland to win tonight. With Moxley winning tonight, and he won with a statement tonight, I'm a little more leery that Copeland might win the title at Revolution. I do not necessarily know what that means because it would end the Death Riders as we currently know them. Obviously, the entire shtick is Moxley has the title. If he doesn't have the title, where does that leave the Death Riders? And where do we go, A, as a company for AEW with Copeland as champion, or B, do we have Christian cash in? And then where do we go from there? Do we have a three-way feud between Christian, Copeland, and Moxley? Do we just rehash the Christian Copeland thing again? Because we already had that over the TNT Championship, and it was pretty good. That match at World's End a couple of years ago was one of the two best matches on that card. And I was there live. Trust me, that was not that great of a card. So I am not going to lie. I'm a little concerned about where they're going from here. We will see if Moxley retains at Revolution, but I'm none too happy about the alleged prospects that I think might come from this match. Because if Moxley is winning here, and like I said, then what happens? Is there the chance that Moxley does retain at Revolution? Yeah, of course. Then I don't want to see you burying Copeland, but damn, he got the shit kicked out of him by the Death Riders then, didn't he? So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. I think it sets up for a very intriguing couple of weeks as we get towards March 9th. After this, we headed to another match with a hometown hero as we saw Buddy Matthews face off against Kazuchika Okada for the AEW Continental Championship. This was a real show stealer of a match. It was really good. Another one I wish I could have seen this entirety. I'm going to keep repeating that again. It's the truth. It really, really is. They showed some stuff when they came out of the commercial break that looked awesome, that I would have loved to see from these guys live, and you just weren't allowed. You just couldn't see it, and I feel like at home, you just lost a lot of momentum throughout the match. Excuse me. So anyway, further introductions. Obviously, Buddy very, very over being a hometown hero. Okada, in lieu of his elevator that he usually has, actually had a cone of lasers around him. And I really, really liked it to the point where I think he should keep it. It looked awesome. So we'll see what they end up doing with that. Obviously, if they're going to repurpose the Cody Vader, the guy to have it should be Okada. But damn, if those lasers didn't look cool. Anyway, to start the match, Buddy tried to shake Okada's hand, and Okada hit him with the fake out. And that was pretty cool. We also had a lot of barking at the beginning of the match for Buddy. And I do kind of like now that the Hounds of Hell just have the barking. It started with Brody, that was his thing, but with Malachi now gone, presumably. Well, actually, he is officially gone from AEW. We'll see if he ends up back in WWE. But I do like now that the barking seems to apply to all of the Hounds of Hell, not just Brody, but to Buddy. And it's been happening for Julia for a while, so I imagine it'll pick up. Early in the match, Okada tried to leave. He grabbed his belt, started walking up the ramp, but Buddy got a mic and said, "I know I've been calling you a bitch, but over here you're an absolute wanker." And Okada was having none of that. The crowd got on the big "you're a wanker" chant, but Okada came right back in. And I'm only going to use this word once, even though I'm sure the Aussies would like me to use it more. I have to imagine Buddy really wanted to call him a cunt in that situation. You're an absolute cunt is exactly what he wanted to say. That's how the Aussies do it. They're the best, and we should use that word way more often over here. I apologize. I'll get out of the accent again. We had Buddy injure his knee right before the commercial, and it surprisingly didn't come up that much in this match. Anytime he hit a meteor or anything, because that's one of his big moves there, it came into play, but I thought it would affect him more, and it ended up not really happening. As we got to the end sequence of this, something really surprised me. Buddy hit a go to sleep, or it pretty much looked like a go to sleep. That then led into Buddy going for the stomp, but Okada countered it into a Rainmaker, and then holy shit, Buddy kicked out. According to Nigel, he is the first person in AEW to kick out of a Rainmaker. So, I know, spoiler, Buddy lost, but that is huge for Buddy Matthews. That is insane that he's the first guy in AEW to kick out of a Rainmaker. Or at least, within, obviously, Kenny and Will has, but not within the company. So that's big time for him. Okada really giving him the rub here with this, because Buddy looked great at the end of this match. He probably could have had it a couple of times, because after the kick, Okada brought the belt into the ring, but the ref grabbed it. Buddy used that distraction to roll Okada up, and Okada kicked out. Buddy then hit the stomp. Okada kicked out of that. Buddy then hit Matthews Law, which is a great name considering it used to be Murphy's Law. Anything that can happen will happen, but I love it. But it was too close, and the momentum allowed Okada to get his foot on the rope, which also got a chance of bullshit. But what a false finish. Buddy had him, and Okada's foot just happened to fall onto the rope. Just a great, great piece of storytelling there. Shortly after that, Buddy hit a superplex, came out of it almost Seth Rollins style, but instead of hitting a Falcon Arrow, actually hit a jackhammer, which was pretty cool. Well, so Shivani called it a jackhammer. I wasn't sure if it was jackhammer or Falcon Arrow. I'm going to go with Shivani on this one. Either way, it was right in the middle of them. But Okada kicked out of that, so Buddy immediately transitioned into a cloverleaf submission that Okada was eventually able to get out of. When he did that, he sent Buddy towards the corner, and the ref was there. So Buddy had to stop short of the ref, and the ref was trapped in the corner. Okada then charged at Buddy. Buddy felt it coming. He moved out of the way, and Okada then had to stop short himself of the referee. Buddy then came in from behind Okada, phrasing, and grabbed him, pulled him back, and as he did so, Okada grabbed the ref and started pulling him back. Okada then used that distraction to upkick Buddy in the dick from behind, and then grabbed Buddy, hit the Rainmaker, 1, 2, 3, and picked up the win. Like I said, this was probably the show-stealing match of the night. Probably going to be the one most under the radar, but this was awesome. Even with the commercial breaks, even with it not being live, I got to imagine this crowd was way more enthusiastic for this than we can probably hear, because Buddy had him a couple of times, and he kicked out of the Rainmaker. So I think this is, surprisingly enough, I think this is the match I want to see the Raw tape for. This was really, really good. Absolutely loved it. And hopefully we can see the whole thing, because this was a This should have been, much like Harley, this should have been a star-making performance for Buddy. Not that he necessarily needs it, but this could help catapult him and help catapult the Hounds of Hell, really make, even in a loss, really making him look like a true contender to any belt. And I'm not going to say buried here late night on a Saturday in Australia. It definitely didn't. This was a widely publicized show. But it was certainly done a disservice by the fact that this wasn't a live feed. And I hope we can see it because Buddy was awesome in this match. And obviously, again, much like the Harley match and with Mercedes, Okada can wrestle a broomstick to a 5-star match. But Buddy can also wrestle a broomstick to a 5-star match. So these two guys went out, absolutely killed it. I would love to see more from them. And hopefully in the near future, we could see more from Buddy and Brody, maybe as a tag team, as singles wrestlers, whatever it is. I need more from them. I need them to get titles hopefully soon. There is a big part of me that actually does want to see them take the tag team championships off of the Hurt Syndicate, but I want it to be in the future. Now, we'll see how long the Hurt Syndicate ends up holding those titles, because I said when they won them, 500-day reign. The Hounds of Hell need titles before 500 days. So if they end up having, as James suggested on Wednesday, a short reign with a whole lot of dominant title victories or defenses, I'm okay with that if the Hounds of Hell win it. If they end up having a long reign, hopefully the Hounds of Hell can maybe get some singles gold. Maybe, if Buddy or Brody can grab the TNT title. I think the international title is going to be a little wrapped up right now. But, if Brody grabs the TNT title, and Kenny ends up grabbing the international title, or either way, even if it's still Takeshita after Revolution, would not mind seeing Buddy go up against either of those guys in the title match, because it'd be a banger. And put it on pay-per-view, Tony. Don't fuck around with that. Don't put it on the Dynamite. Push the Hounds of Hell. These guys deserve pay-per-view matches. They are over. The people love them. They bark. And you just put out a star-making performance out of Buddy, or to raise his star. I don't want to say star-making. You raised the star of Buddy tonight, not only with the quality of the match, but the fact you had him kick out of the Rainmaker. You gotta put him in pay-per-view matches. You can't just have him do the, hey, it's the title match of the week type of stuff anymore. Hopefully, and I mean this with respect, Hounds of Hell do not fall into the Lucha Brothers category of, they won a bunch of shit, we know they're fearsome, they're going to lose all the time. Because that's what happened with the latter stages of the Lucha Brothers in AEW, and I do not want to see that for the Hounds of Hell, especially now that the dog is off the leash. All right, let's head to our main event. This saw Mariah May, the champion, face off against timeless Toni Storm in her home country for the AEW Women's Championship. Before the commercial break, before the match, we had Renee give a great voiceover for a video package hyping up this match. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know if it was her, RJ City, whatever it was. The writing was great. Renee delivered it great. I just wanted to give her a shout out for that. It was a great video package. Shouts to her. After Mariah made her entrance, which was her typical entrance, we then had Luther come through the crowd dressed as an old-timey usher, and he helped introduce Toni, who initially had her Rocker Toni theme hit before the timeless music then came out on, and Toni came out with some great old school flapper gear. She had a big flowing robe, I don't know what it's like, see-through. I don't know what the material is. I'm very bad with dresses. And she had the nice feather, side feather headdress. Looked like she came out of the Great Gatsby. It looked great in the black and white, but they very quickly changed it to color, surprisingly. as the camera turned. I thought they did it a little early, but it allowed it to display the gorgeous shade of blue she was rocking. Obviously, the blue of the Australian flag. She had the Aussie flag on her right hip. I think she had a couple of stars on the left. I don't know if those are the Aussie stars, or the Kiwi stars. If you've seen the last couple of days, she is originally from New Zealand. She was born there, but moved to the Gold Coast when she was about 4, and it's been brought up a couple of times recently. So I think she compared herself to a certain dessert that they have over there. I don't remember the name. Something with a P. But she was, I think she said, much like most things from New Zealand, it was created there and then immediately claimed by the Australians. Great line out of her, as is always. But she looked great. Mariah also looked great. Union Jack on her jacket to help stir up some animosity amongst the former British Isle. This was another part where the crowd really came to play. Got the good Toni, Toni Storm, Toni, Toni Storm chants out of them. Late a little bit into the match, we got some rip her tits off chants. I think somebody had a sign in the front. I don't know if that's what led to it, but either way, crowd really came to play for this one. And again, I have to imagine it was probably better live. Let's head to the comments. I'm sure. Oh, hey, you know it. What's going on, dude? Glad you're up this late. You know what asking? I wonder if Toni gets double salary when she appears with both characters. That'd be really funny if they pay rookie Toni Storm and they have to pay timeless Toni Storm. And yeah, no, it's good to see you too, man. I didn't expect you to be up this late, but I'm glad you're here. Anyway, let's get into the match. After Toni missed a hip attack on the apron, she went into the ring post, and then Mariah was able to grab her and hit a Mayday on the outside. However, she threw Toni back in, and Toni was able to kick out of anything from that. Shortly after, Mariah had Toni still down and hit a hip attack in the corner, but Toni was able to rally out of that and surprise Mariah with a Mayday that Mariah then kicked out of. Toni then got Mariah in the corner and 3 consecutive hip attacks, followed up by a Storm Zero, but Mariah again kicked out. Mariah then played basically dead. She was just to the point where the announcers thought she was out. But then Mariah was able to use that to her advantage. She hit suplex. I think it was a gut wrench, if Toni called it correctly. And then she hit back-to-back Maydays, but Toni was able to kick out of it. And then for whatever reason, and I wrote this down, and it happened right at this point, Luther decided this was the time, because I think Nigel just started yelling a lot that Mariah should have won at this point. And Luther just was like, boo this man. And the crowd just started getting on Nigel something fierce. And it was hilarious. Meanwhile, back in the ring, Mariah put Toni up on the top rope and gave her what Nigel called the kiss of death. But Toni was able to slide out of that, bring Mariah into the middle of the ring, and hit a power bomb, followed up by a Storm Zero. But the force of the Storm Zero allowed Mariah to roll out of the ring. When Mariah got back in at the behest of Toni, Mariah hit a headbutt and a Storm Zero herself, but she decided to get cocky and not make a cover. So when she went to set up for her next move, Toni rolled her up, kept Mariah down for the 3, and regained her AEW Women's World Championship, making her the first 4-time Women's World Champion in AEW. Pretty sure Nigel cried. Mariah definitely did, as we saw her cry on the outside. And the last shot we got was Toni up on the turnbuckles, holding up the championship. And then it cut. And again, the fact that this was pre-taped sucks. Because Toni, even though this is now her 4th championship, easily got her flowers there. This is a different Toni that has been in Australia, at least wrestling. I know she went back after she lost the title a few months ago, but this is a different Toni that has been in Australia wrestling in a very long time. This is best character work of the year, whatever friggin' thing she won for the Wrestling Observer Awards the other day. Toni Storm. This is all the PWI awards, Toni Storm. This is timeless Toni Storm. Finally back in front of her home country of Australia, winning this title. And we got about 25 seconds of celebration, tops, and 10 of those were dedicated to showing Mariah crying on the floor. But we had to get out of there. And that is disappointing because this was a great match. It was. And I don't want to say this was as good as the one they had in at All In London when Mariah won the title, but it was still really good. I thought it was great. They told a great story. The fact that the two were able to hit each other's finishers and kick out of them. The fact that Mariah hit Storm Zero, which she has won plenty of matches with, and not follow up on that, and her cockiness and her arrogance and her ego is what ends up costing her the championship, is a great story. And especially because, as I was talking about on Wednesday, I said, I think either way, whether Mariah wins or loses, she's going to take a real fall here, ego-wise, and start slipping into that kind of maniacal side we had been seeing since Toni dressed up as her a couple of weeks ago. And the fact that now it was her ego that caused her to lose, I think this sets up Mariah for a real serious break mentally. And it's going to be really good. But it just missed that feeling of somebody winning the championship in their home country, of all things. And I want to keep talking about this match, but frankly, to go over the whole thing, this is my biggest gripe with this show because I love this show. Or at least I wanted to. I love the wrestling in this show. I love the announcing. The presentation sucked. And I don't mean that from camera work or the announcing. Everybody did their jobs there. But the editing was such a detriment to what I have to imagine was an unbelievable wrestling experience live. And had we seen this live on TV or even live to tape, even if this was on tape delay and they showed it in its entirety, it probably would have been so much better than what we saw tonight. And I find that so disappointing because all of these wrestlers went out there and put on a great show. And they're already announced they're returning to Australia again. And I got to imagine the hype is going to be pretty real considering what AEW put out there tonight. But here in the States, what we saw, at least what we saw late, I know AEW can do better than that. And I really hope, and I know the show is better than that. And I really hope that we can see the live uncut version of this. Because I have to imagine it was well worth the watch. Because this show, as it was well worth the watch. And I still think the editing took so much away from it. All right, before I hop out of here, let's hop into the comments. I saw some people going off. Maria saying, it was an awesome moment for Toni. Loved the drama in this match. It was a very dramatic match. And I think that's what really drew me in. The wrestling obviously was great, but these two women really know how to tell a story. And as Maria, yes, you're right. It's the best story of wrestling. It's one of, I think, the three best. I'm sure there's probably one in WWE somewhere. But right now, the two best in AEW are Mariah and Toni and whatever is going on with Hangman. By and large, it's usually, ever since Toni became timeless, it's been the two of them who have been really pushing the real story narrative of everything. I think I'll give honestly, right now, I think I'll give third place to Swerve and Ricochet. which I know sounds a little crazy, but Ricochet has really drawn me in with his new character. So we'll see. Asking with Kenny being out so long, who Toni was carrying AEW. And yeah, no, honestly, she was. I think she was carrying it, and Hangman too. Look, we've talked about this a lot. There was a real downslope with AEW last year. And it kind of unfortunately coincided. I don't want to say with MJF's face turn. I think it kind of really coincided with Cole snapping his ankle in half and turning it into dust. Because that ruined the MJF storyline. And then everything around that wasn't great at the time because there were so many injuries to so many big stars. If you look at it, Copeland was hurt, just off the top of my head. I know he's not the biggest one. Kenny was out for almost a year. The Bucks weren't really around. Just everyone was out. Everyone was hurt. Switchblade missed a whole bunch of time. Like, so many people were hurt. And you could see it was taking a toll on the product. And I think within the last 5 weeks or so, outside of one meh episode, AEW is firing the way it was. I don't want to say at the beginning, but it's feeling like that again. At least maybe right out of the pandemic when they started touring outside of Jacksonville again. Like, it is firing on all cylinders. And you add all those original talents back. You know, Kenny being at the forefront. Sorry. I'm going on a bit here. You know what distracting me with mute this James guy. So James comes in. Thank you for joining me, James. And he comes in and he says I'm awesome for doing this, and I appreciate the compliment. And you know it just is like mute him. He's probably a troll. And he distracts me from my very good rant here. But as I was saying, we got back a lot of injured AEW originals. Combine that with all of the flood of new talent, a lot of whom also got hurt, with Cole, with Switchblade, with Copeland. Like, and then you combine that with, and then you throw Ospreay into that mix, Fletcher as well, who has risen up to a star, Takeshita, who is now a star. Like, we are firing on so many cylinders. Even Jericho is doing good work right now. And I told you it was going to come back around, and it did. And maybe not him himself, but it's helping. He's helping Big Bill. He's helping Brian Keith. He's helping Bandito. He's helping the Outrunners. Even if you don't like Jericho, the guys around him are getting over. AEW is really hot right now. And it's awesome to see. And the wrestling in this show definitely proved that. The presentation, again, pre-taped aspect of it sucked. Or not even the pre-taped aspect. The fact that they cut it down so it would fit in 2 hours and there's commercials sucked. I wish this was just live to tape. TNT just sort of let it run. It would have been 10 times better. But we got what we got. And once again, I really do hope that we get the full version. And that is what I'm going to end this on, because that is what I really, really want to get across with this episode. Please, Tony Khan, Warner Brothers, TNT, whoever I got to plead to, give us the full version of this show. Because as it was great. And if you didn't watch it because it was in the middle of the night, it is worth your time. But if we can get a live version, you should go out of your way to watch this show. And on that note, I would like to thank everybody so much for watching me here at the Market Down Podcast. I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. If you like this episode, it lets me know that you like what I'm doing. Or any other episodes, it lets us know that you like what we're doing in general. And if you subscribe, you continue to get great stuff here on the channel. I know I will be back on Wednesday to cover Dynamite. We'll see about Monday. It depends on what happens there, but we're definitely back on Dynamite. Got the Gym Pack Zone on Thursdays for you TNA fans. It's Thursdays or Fridays. We're tinkering with it a little bit. You might see a few changes in the pod in the coming months. We're just going to try some new stuff. Maybe try to mess with the algorithms a little bit, help us grow. But we're not going to, nothing too drastic, we hope. So you guys can continue to get the same stuff that you've been enjoying for the last, I think, 3 years or so. So keep an eye out for that. We'll continue to cover pay-per-views. I do believe the next one is Revolution. I could be wrong. It's at our Elimination Chamber. Either way, we'll be on for both of those. So be sure to subscribe, and you can catch all of those. If you want to check us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Blue Sky, all in the description below here on YouTube. If you're watching us over on Twitter or on Facebook and you want to check us out on some other stuff, Twitter is at marketdown_pod. Instagram is at marketdownpod. YouTube.com/marketdown3665. Blue Sky is marketdownpod.bsky.social. I think I got that right finally. Let's hit the comments before we go. James says he will be there too. He'll be somewhere. Oh, Wednesday. Yep. It's saying he's going to mute yourself. See you later. Good job. Thank you. I appreciate you coming out. You know what? Danny's saying I'm drunk. Probably. I'm working on it. I'm not quite there yet. I've only had, you don't want to know. I'm sober enough to do this, and I'm sober enough to know when to end the show. So on behalf of myself, Nick Cummings, I would like to thank you all again so much for watching me here at the Market Down Podcast. Thanks for staying up, everybody. Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy! Oi, oi, oi!